So, I mentioned in my previous video that I got sent a VR treadmill, like the kind you see in Ready Player One that lets you physically walk and run in a completely virtual world. Now, you're probably thinking, good for you, man, why do I care? Well, this isn't just any VR treadmill, no. This is the cheapest consumer-focused VR treadmill on the market currently, which means two important things. One, that you could literally buy one of these right now for less than it costs to build a VR-ready PC, which you don't even need for this. This works with completely standalone VR. And two, that increasingly lower price means that this technology could be the future of truly immersive VR. But what's the experience actually like? How much does it really add to your VR games? And most importantly, is it worth it? So the model I have specifically is the Katwalk C2 Core, which was sent to me by CatVR, and I've only had it for about a week, and then halfway through that week I got sick, so I can't really answer everything in this video. I'll need a bit more time of using this before I can give you my full review. But what I can do is showcase how this thing works in two of my recent favorite games. Also, a portion of this video is sponsored by CatVR, so again, to clarify, this isn't a review. Now, while I could showcase this treadmill by playing the most popular VR games like Blade and Sorcery or Bone Lab, because trust me, it does work great in those, I'd rather bring your attention to a couple more underrated games that you may not have heard of. This first game is called Iron Strike, and it's actually a perfect way of showing off this treadmill, since a major part of this game is running across breathtakingly beautiful battlefields. But first, we need to connect our treadmill to our Quest, which is relatively easy. After assembly and plugging everything in, all it takes is connecting the Cat Nexus hub to the same Wi-Fi network as your headset, and downloading the Gateway app onto your headset. Then if all goes well, just install the patch that'll integrate support into the game you choose. So now all you have to do is open the game and start playing. I apologize for the janky setup. I'm really hustling to get this video out before Christmas, but I want to show you what this is like to actually use. You've got these special shoes, and if you don't know how these work, it's basically the same way a mouse works. It's got a little sensor here, and as you drag it along the base here, it tracks like the position of it, and then it'll move you in the game according to that positional data. It's really cool. Let's try it out. Iron Strike is like the co-op PvE version of Iron Lights. If you don't know what that is, it's a PvP sword fighting game where your swords break and regenerate after every clash. I remember a lot of you commented on my Broken Edge video telling me to check out Iron Lights because it's pretty similar, but at the time I couldn't find any players online, which is a shame because the mechanics seemed really unique and fun. So it's fortunate that the recently released Iron Strike brings over the same satisfyingly smooth melee combat to a co-op roguelike adventure. There are a ton of weapons to try, and mastering them requires genuine skill. Plus, in typical roguelike fashion, along each run you'll get to pick upgrades, which can sometimes drastically change your playstyle. For example, you might get a perk that grants you healing on every third parry, which incentivizes a very cautious playstyle focusing on defense and only striking when there's an opening. On the other hand, you could receive a perk that buffs your damage for every consistent hit you land. These choices become more and more important as the levels and enemies get tougher. And that's another thing I love about this game. The enemies are actually challenging, but not for annoying reasons like wonky physics or huge health pools, although some of them do have a lot of health. You see, I'm pretty sure these are motion captured, or whatever the term is for when a VR game records your movements, and that's actually really refreshing for a PvE melee game. Every enemy type swings their weapons in such a natural way it almost looks like it's a player-controlled character, and that keeps blocking and counterattacking from becoming boring due to overly reused animations. Seriously, I've memorized like every attack animation in Blade and Sorcery. It gets old. So fighting each of these enemies actually feels like a duel against a competent opponent. Now, what makes this game perfect for the VR treadmill is how open these levels are. Normally I would criticize this game for having such empty feeling maps, but in this context it works perfectly. Charging through the field with your sword held high above your head feels incredible on the catwalk. And then when the action starts, fights are mostly stationary, which helps you focus on quickly defeating each enemy before running on to the next. Something I really appreciate about this game is that the enemies will always attack from the same distance away from you, which prevents a lot of jank found in games where sometimes you need to backtrack or strafe precisely to properly position yourself for melee attacks. I find it basically impossible to consistently move any direction other than straight forward on the catwalk, which can make some games significantly more challenging. But here, that isn't an issue. When you die in Iron Strike, you go back to this astral plane to get a bit of lore and then some new weapons and armor, and then head back out. It's a tried and true gameplay loop that I'm sure is a ton more fun with friends, because again, this game is co-op. I haven't put a ton of hours into this game, but I really am curious to know your thoughts on it as well. The other game that I've really enjoyed playing on the Katwalk is called Genotype. This game is a shockingly high-quality action-adventure puzzler, and I know that was a lot of descriptive words, but basically I'd put this game in the same category as Red Matter 2 and even Half-Life Alyx. The voice acting is especially noteworthy and is what will most likely hook you right away.
What was that?
A greeting from an ecosystem that's gonna flood the planet.
And if that doesn't sell you on this game, then maybe the experimental gloves that generate biological weapons will.
Is that thing alive?
Its cells are alive, but it has no brain.
I love how different this game decided to be when it comes to weapons and environmental interactions. Swapping out the typical action hero firearms for a grotesque slime launcher was certainly a risk, but it definitely paid off by providing the game with a seriously unique identity. Eventually, you'll unlock other types of organisms that you can generate at will by pulling the tab on your glove. Some of these have very specific functions, like this claw grabber that extends forward and can be used to clear doorways or as a desperate close-ranged attack. I'm not even sure why this game works so perfectly well with the Katwalk, to the point where my real-life footsteps lined up with the footstep audio from the game. It must be something to do with the specific speed your character walks at in this game, but it makes it such a perfect experience for the Katwalk. By the way, you can adjust specific settings with this VR treadmill by changing them in the Gateway app on your Quest. I seem to always prefer maxing out the accuracy and speed sliders, but I'm still very new to using this, so if you have any tips, feel free to leave them in the comments. Now, for the sponsored segment. KatVR has just reached a huge milestone in terms of improving their support for standalone Quest games. There are now over 100 standalone Quest games on 2 and 3 that you can easily play with their VR treadmills, without a PC. And that includes recent games like Vampire the Masquerade and Assassin's Creed Nexus, which means you can physically run and jump across these rooftops. But for right now, KatVR wanted me to share that they're having a huge Christmas promotion. For a limited time, you can get the Katwalk C2 Core, which is everything you need, for $8.99. Or you can get the Katwalk C2 Plus, which is the higher end model that's on sale now too. Thank you so much to KatVR for supporting the channel, but for now, hopefully this video gave you something useful, either a new game to play or a VR treadmill to look into. Let me know in the comments which you'll be checking out. Are you going to give Iron Strike a try? Or maybe you've been looking for another VR story game to really get into, like Genotype. Either way, if you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more videos like this. I'm Virtual Bro, and I'll see you later.